By the end of this video, we will know how to utilize a Markov transition matrix to evaluate future states. Let's get started. You are given the following information about a homogeneous Markov chain. There are three states to answering a trivia question: skip, state 0, correct, state 1, wrong, state 2. Transition matrix is listed, and then the candidate skipped the previous question. Calculate the probability of the candidate correctly answering at least one of the two subsequent questions. I apologize for the typo. Jumping right in, for this problem, the only thing I can think of something you need to have memorized for this exam is really just how to interpret a transition matrix. So this is, pet peeve isn't the right term. I'm a bit annoyed with the phrasing of this question, because to me, knowing that the top row corresponds to state 0, I don't know why we need to have that memorized, but when they list states, state 0 corresponds to the top, not the bottom, like a traditional X and Y axis would. So I'm not annoyed. But that being said, this is just something we need to have memorized, because apparently they're not willing to label their axes, which frustrates me to no end. So that is to say, the top left corner is the probability of, given you're in state 0, probability of going to state 0. And then moving over a column, we see, again, probability, given you're in state 0, going to state 1. So this is just how to see it. The top left corner is 0, 0, and then as you progress in states, you're going down and to the right. Which row you're in corresponds to the from state, so your current state corresponds to the row, and the state that you then move to corresponds to the column. So that is what the transition matrix is. You need to know that that's the framework. And now to jump into the problem itself and the calculations. So for the calculations, I have two different ways of approaching this problem. The second one is not the way I like to do these types of problems, but probably the most true to the matrix multiplication and just formulation of what you would read on Markov chains, which is whatever your current state is multiplied by the transition matrix multiplication. And we are interested in two states in the future, so we'd multiply it twice. And doing that matrix multiplication will yield the probability of being in each state. So here we would read this as, given you skipped, there's a 17% chance you would skip two states in the future, a 78.5% chance that you would, whatever the second state is, I forget, or state 1, correct. So there's a 78.5% chance you would be correct and a 4.5% chance you would be wrong. The way I like to do these problems, and I apologize, I wasn't scrolled down enough for you to see that, I don't think. So matrix multiplication twice using that transition matrix yields these results. This is not the first time this type of problem has shown up on the exam. So there is a high probability something like this will show up again. And when there's this little going on, I prefer to just draw a tree of all possible outcomes and their corresponding probabilities. It works out, the math works out to be the same as just doing this matrix multiplication, right? But when you actually think through and write everything down, I feel more confident that I'm going to do everything right and not misconnect different probabilities. So what I have here is, we know that previously you skipped a question, and then there's only two things you can do. You can either, with 85% chance, be correct, or 15% chance be wrong. Scrolling back up, we see that here in this first row. And there's technically a third line, but there's only a 0% chance of you skipping again. And that's why there's only two branches in each state, because there's always a 0% chance. But even if that wasn't the case, I'd still do this process, where I'm drawing out all the individual probabilities. So technically I could have a third branch here that would just have 0%, and then everything after that doesn't matter. Then, again, correct. So given I am correct, what's the probability I'm correct again? 80%. Given I'm correct, what's the probability I skip? I'm 20%. So what's the probability that given I skipped, I'm correct, and then I'm correct? Well, they're independent events, and so I can just multiply their probabilities and see that happens with 68% probability. Likewise, I get at the 17%, 10.5%, and then 4.5%. So now I know for two states in the future all possible outcomes and their corresponding probabilities. And at this point, I would scroll back up. I would say, what's the question? So calculate the probability the candidate correctly answering at least one of the two subsequent questions. So if I go here, if I get this one correct, then I'm all set. I don't care if I skip or I'm correct on the next question because I got this one right. So these both work. And then if I'm wrong, but then I'm correct, I still got at least one right. And it's 10.5. So you can either add these three probabilities together, or I can do 1 minus the one case where it doesn't happen, where I'm wrong and then I'm wrong again. This is less math, so I chose to do it this way. So I did 1 minus 4.5% is 95.5%. Scrolling back up, we see that corresponds to C, so that is our final answer. Thanks for watching. As always, I'd really appreciate it if you consider subscribing, liking, or commenting below with any fun fact you have. It doesn't even need to be CAS related, but it helps the YouTube algorithm. So help me out, leave a comment below, just say some random fun fact that you have. Thanks for watching.